Welcome to Bracket U, a college basketball bracket podcast brought to you by Delphi Bracketology. This is our first episode of the season. We are beginning our 8th year of bracketology overall and want to bring weekly updates to those who want to know where their favorite team stands in regards to the NCAA tourney. This podcast is for you junkies who have March Madness all season long, and we're able to create this new content thanks to sponsorships like that of Coca-Cola Bottling of Kokomo and other generous donations that our followers have sent us. Special thanks to Bob Thompson for creating our intro and outro music, and special thanks to my friend Jared Morris of the Assembly Call for inspiring us as a group to branch out and try new things. Okay, it's now time. I'm Brian Tonsoni, the lead sponsor of Delphi Bracketology, and with me tonight, Cade Nelson is a junior editor of Delphi Bracketology, and Cade is the Tom Brady of our high school football team. And an inspiring sports media guy, so he will be on the show quite a bit. Cade, what's on your mind this year as the college basketball season begins and our bracketology stuff begins?
The buzzer beaters and the marquee matchups between the two bigger schools in each conference, like rivalries, and even like the buzzer beaters we saw with Ohio State. I always think those are great. Those are always fun to watch. And then just in bracketology, watching teams rise and fall with good wins and bad losses and things like that gets me going too.
And also joining us is Luke Smock, a senior editor of the Delphi Bracketology Club. Luke is committed to play D1 baseball for the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee and is just an all-around great dude. Luke, college basketball here. What's got you excited about the new season?
Obviously, I'm excited to watch my school, Milwaukee, and Patrick Baldwin, who's top dude, supposed to go in the draft next year. So I'll be watching him closely. And as a Purdue fan, I'll be cheering them on. They're supposed to be pretty good this year, so I'm rooting for them big time. And I'll watch IU, cheer against them, their new coach. And Texas, I think they could be a real wild card with Marcus Carr and Chris Beard coming in. I think they could be pretty solid. And also, UCLA is ranked real high after a big tourney last year. So let's see how they come back this year.
So these guys have been through bracketology and a little bit about our history. We started in 2015, and then the last couple years have just been kind of crazy with the COVID situation. We had all of our work done in 2020, and then the tournament was canceled. And then last year we had a lot of policies at school where we could barely meet, and we weren't able to update our webpage. We weren't able to do any of the podcasting or shows, and so we're excited about getting back to doing what we love to do for bracketology. So our first topic and our general topic tonight is just the importance of wins and losses. And Luke, you were part of a couple guys that could meet last year, and we finished in the top 3 of the bracket matrix. Talk about the importance of good wins and how to avoid bad losses.
Yeah, we break it into the quads, quad 1, 2, 3, and 4. And obviously any loss for a contending team in quad 3 or 4 will hurt you pretty bad later on in the year when you're comparing amongst teams. And the more wins you can stack on in quad 1 will help you out quite a bit. And obviously Duke and Kansas getting off to a good start. They're already starting off their resume pretty good.
Cade, we saw some interesting results early on already. Virginia loses to Navy. We're going to talk about that a little bit more in depth, but that's a bad loss. And what in a normal situation, that loss would be taken to account with all their wins and other losses too. But a loss like that stays with them. Talk about Virginia and the work they got to do now to make up for that loss.
Yeah, so Virginia now, although like you said, they'll get some wins. Obviously, they're a good team. They're not just going to lose out for the rest of the season. But as Luke said, later in the year, when we start to compare those teams, and then there's that one loss that they had early in the season with Navy that could bump them down between a team that early in the season like this won one of those games, and so they were able to move up above Virginia because of that bad loss that they had early on.
Our work here at Delphi Bracketology, it deals with wins and losses, those quality wins and losses. The early games matter just as much as those in late February and March. But sometimes we overreact to one game. It will be a total resume of 31 games by the time we try to finish our bracketology work. Is there anything, Cade, that you think we can learn just from watching games and seeing the margin of victories? Obviously, we're not going to know a lot about the final placing of these, but there are some things that we can kind of start seeing with every result. What share with everyone what some of those things are?
Yeah, so we see in teams like Ohio State and Indiana both having wins, but those wins being very close wins against some smaller schools that we kind of see like what team they'll be. And maybe that's just early on in the season working out kinks. But if that translates and later you see early on that like the team could just kind of fall apart or not have those quality wins later on in the season that they need to move higher up in the rankings.
Yeah, the trends are very important to see what kind of team you have. So the close games that happened on Tuesday are probably a lot of first game jitters and things of that nature. Luke, we talk a lot about wins and losses, but there's also this feature called the net, which is some kind of crazy formula, which does take into effect winning margin and your offense and efficiency. So these games matter not only who wins and who loses, but how you play. And sometimes these close games can maybe make a difference in net rankings. Talk a little bit about your experience last year when we decided to put all this together using that metric.
Yeah, well, we tried not to solely focus on the net and go in order of that, but obviously you keep that in mind when you're making your selections. You're not going to have a team with a net of over like 30 plus going as your one seed line. Like you're going to keep in consideration and keep it somewhat close so you're not going just crazy with your numbers and your rankings.
So it is important to win because how you play offensively and defensively is a part of that calculation. As Luke said, you're not going to get a top seed if you're 30 or above, and it's still a ranking system or a sorting system for quad wins. So, gentlemen, let's go and reveal our top 16 seeds, which actually means absolutely nothing because we're a data-driven group. We look at wins, we look at the net, and we make decisions. And really, all of that isn't relevant until January, but we'll talk seeding and movement and brackets regardless because that's what we like to do. But here are our top seeds. The 1 seed line in order is Gonzaga, UCLA, Kansas, and Villanova. Our 2 seeds preseason, Michigan, Texas, Duke, Purdue. Our 3 seeds, Alabama, Kentucky, Illinois, and Oregon. And our 4 seeds, Memphis, Baylor, North Carolina, and Tennessee. Luke, I'll come back to you. Again, this is just reading some preseason magazines and studying the game and knowing what teams are expected to be good. If there was a team in this top 16 that falls out somewhat early, which team do you think is most likely to fall out of these top 16?
I would say I'd probably go with Illinois maybe because they're without Kofi Cockburn here at the beginning with all that's going on. If they get a loss here, they looked good their first game, but I don't even know who they were playing.
Jackson State, I believe.
Yeah. But if they get a lot, how many games is he suspended? 3?
I think he's 3.
Okay. I don't know who they play next, but if they slip a loss in there somewhere, that probably won't look good at them. But to start without him, because he's a pretty big time player for him.
And here's an interesting thing too, and we'll talk about this every time we're on one of these podcasts. Your games matter whether Kofi Cockburn plays or not. But if you lose a game without Kofi, there is a little bit of cushion for the committee to say if they had Kofi, they might have done a little better. They do take that into some consideration. Cade, which team here is most likely to maybe fall out of the top 4 early in the season?
I think a team like maybe Kentucky or Memphis might fall out just because they play in tough conferences. And obviously playing against those teams, you have to play your best to be able to get those wins. And then one slip up means falling out, especially early on with a bad loss or anything like that.
Yeah, one game shouldn't matter a whole lot, but when you only have 2 or 3 games, it's 33% of your resume. And we're going to practice. Our group practices placing these teams. And when we put it out on our website on a bracket or the seed list, please keep in mind that, you have 3 games on your schedule. One loss is 1/3 of your schedule is losses. So that's why the end of the year is a lot for that. And Kate, I like your comment about the Memphises, the Kentuckys, Illinois. There's some teams here who are really should be good, but we don't know how all the new pieces will fit together. Memphis is huge. They have some talent. Luke, we were talking about that today in school about the best players, a couple 5-stars playing for Memphis that we think they're going to pan out, and that's why we had them here. But again, we are that data driven. So back to you, Cade. Who's your national champion right now? If you had to pick early in the season, is it someone here or have anyone outside of this group?
Well, I wish it was Ohio State because, I'm a really big fan of them. But if I had to go with anyone, I think Gonzaga is a great team because they got some young, talented guys, and they're already at the top. So, and they've been there before. So with those seniors and juniors that they have on the team, they already have some experience, so they can help those talented young guys out and then make a push deep later on in March. So.
Luke, I'm afraid I know which way you're going here on our top 16. Who do you think of this group is most likely to win? Who do you want to win? You could go either way.
Yeah, well, I'm definitely cheering for Purdue. I mean, in my lifetime, we had that one good year a couple of years ago, but we haven't made a Final Four, and who knows since when. So I'll be cheering for Purdue, but I think the most logical pick preseason is Gonzaga, just because they are loaded and have Drew Timme, and they lost Jalen Suggs, and who else did they? Oh, the shooter man. What was his name? Kispert,
I think.
Yep. But they had the number 1 recruit coming in, and Drew Timme. I mean, their big guys are just loaded.
Yeah, Gonzaga's got to be the favorite on paper. I look for a team like Kansas and Villanova. Kansas was impressive in beating Michigan State on Tuesday. Again, it's a full season. And Villanova with Jay Wright just keeps winning and winning regardless of who's back. They got their good guard Gillespie back after he injured his knee last year. So we'll also have a segment of up or down, and this is where seeds 5 through 11, we'll talk about teams that aren't in the top 4. And it's just too early up and down. We mentioned loss to Navy, and they can overcome that and make the tournament and win an ACC and all of that. But that is a bad loss. Let's talk, Cade. Why was Duke's win over Kentucky and Kansas win over Michigan State, but really Duke's win over Kentucky a special win for Duke after they did not make the tournament last year? What does that set them up for this year as far as brackets?
Well, it was on a neutral floor, so we look at things like away games, away wins, and neutral wins. So that being a neutral game definitely helps them out. And then it being somewhat of a quote-unquote marquee matchup against Kentucky, and then Kentucky being a highly ranked team helps them out too, because that shows that Duke can get those good wins that they need to be recognized later on as well. So.
Luke, your thoughts on Kentucky? They play a good Duke team, 79-71, have some new pieces. Kentucky did not have a good season either last year, and those are two teams we normally see in the tournament and deep in the tournament. We have them as a 3 seed. I don't think they're going to move too far, if at all, because of a loss to Duke in game 1. Do you like the job Coach Calipari does, or are you not a Kentucky fan?
Well, I think last year was kind of an off-ball year with the COVID stuff, and obviously Kentucky and Duke and all those types of programs, they're always coming with the top recruits of young guys. They come in and they ship them out to go pro. So it all depends how those guys gel together, because as you can tell from last year, you can't just bring in dudes and think you're going to win right away. College basketball is a lot tougher than that. So, I mean, they have the talent. It just depends on if they can piece it together. And obviously last year it was a struggle for them.
Boy, that new kid from Duke is really, really talented. And I think Duke will be back too. So there's part of me that doesn't like those teams that win all the time. And you like to see some upsets along the way. But, there's also something to see traditional teams. And when you go in the tournament and the Duke's playing the Kansas, and those are really, Cade, you mentioned marquee matchups. You love to see marquee matchups. But there's also room for up-and-coming programs, and we like to watch early on. And one of the teams that if we go to the DelphiBracketology.com and go to our bracket, Colorado State had made the tournament, I believe. I had to double-check. And they got off to a great start. They beat last year's Cinderella team, Oral Roberts, by 29. And we've talked about one game doesn't make a big difference, but we do watch trends. And, boy, what a great start for Colorado State. So back to Luke and then Cade with the same question. Are there some teams that aren't in the big conferences or aren't your favorites? We're all Big Ten here. I'm Indiana, Cade's Ohio State. Luke, you're Purdue, and we're going to root for those guys to make the tournament and make some noise. But are there some other teams, Luke, that you like to follow just as a fan?
Well, obviously, definitely Milwaukee, because that's
right.
What I'm doing. And they're pretty big time this year with the big recruit they got, because he could have went to Duke, Kentucky, basically anywhere he wanted. And I've already looked at mock drafts. He's supposed to go top 10 from what I'm seeing. And obviously you don't see that very much in the Horizon Conference. So they'll be very interesting to watch and see how he plays along with the rest of the team.
It would have been a good year for you to be up there as a freshman to go and watch games and watch him play, but he'll probably be long gone by the time you set foot on campus.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about that with some of the other dudes, the baseball dudes.
Mm-hmm. Cade, who's your secondary team or a smaller team that you just kind of like to watch and are looking forward to playing or watching them play this year?
I think is it Loyola Chicago?
Yes.
Yeah. I think their Cinderella runs the past couple of years have been fun to watch. And with all the support they get from those runs, I just think it's cool to see a team like that win in the big stage and have success over the season.
I coached with Coach Lewis over at Western, but when he was at Greenfield Central, he had a player by the name of Tate Hall, who is a senior, a super senior on that Loyola Chicago team. And has been up there now for a few years, that transferred from University of Indianapolis. So that is a program to watch. I'm partial to Indiana State. My son was a manager there. Not sure they're going to have a successful year. They changed coaches and had a lot of turnover. But what's fun about bracketology is you get to see all the schools and look at all the schools. And there are some schools that are going to pop this year that we will follow and share with our listeners. So at this point of every podcast, we'll talk bubble talk, those teams that are just in the last 8 to 10 teams in, the 4 or 8 teams that are out. We just don't have a good feel on that right now. We will probably next week talk a little bit more about teams that are just on that edge. But for your favorite teams, the key to being on the right side of the bubble is win big games. And win big games on the road and neutral. I think Cade brought that up earlier, and then try to avoid losses like Virginia did. And that's how you end up making the NCAA tournament from a 9 seed to 11 seed if you do that. So we'll bring more bracket bubble talk to you, and then we're going to follow up with our game winning, which is just our final statements of each podcast. So Luke, your game winner on this first initial podcast of Bracket U.
Obviously, I'm going to restate that go Purdue and go Milwaukee Panthers. I think as a Purdue fan, I think obviously I'm a little biased, but I think they'll have a good year this year with literally the entire team returning and some good freshmen coming. So obviously go Boilers, and I'll be very interested to watch how Gonzaga does, because they're always so talented, and Texas as well with their new coach and Marcus Carr transferred from Minnesota. I think they'll be interesting to watch. And also, I feel like UCLA might be ranked a little too high just because they had such a great run last year. I mean, I know that's how it works every year, but just because they went on a good run, then all of a sudden they're ranked second. Like sometimes I feel like that's a little bit. You could call it like over dramatic.
Mm-hmm. Cade, your game winner on podcast number 1.
I think it's important to watch a conference like the Big 12 with the four bigger teams being Kansas, Texas, Baylor, and Oklahoma might not be as big, but still they're a team that they've been in the tournament before. And especially a team like Kansas that's ranked so high already, just watching them and how they progress throughout the season and watching them rack up wins will be fun. So,
and my game winner is, I think the Big Ten's the best conference, and we're all biased about the Big Ten because we're here in Big Ten territory and just 20 minutes away from Purdue. And boy, the ACC needs to get going because they had 3 teams get beat by lesser programs, and that just hurts the conference overall because as that net gets calculated, if your bottom half of your conference isn't as strong, I think that's what makes the Big Ten so strong, is that the bottom teams rate out very, very well. And so the ACC is not off to the greatest start with 3 tough losses. So Luke and Cade, thanks for joining us tonight. We will have a lot more information as the season goes on, as the games are played, and we have a lot more wins and losses to talk to. But that's going to do it for our first episode of Bracket U for the 2021-22 season. Check out our website. It is DelphiBracketology.com. We have a lot of information being put out on a regular basis. Seed list and brackets will be updated starting next week on Fridays. And follow us on Twitter at Delphi Brackets and on Instagram at Delphi Bracketology for all information coming out of our club. Also, we urge you to check out our donation page where you can help us with any costs associated with our club, and we appreciate any thoughts of those kind. So may your team always win the big games. May they win the big road wins, and brackets will be here before you know it.